And we're finally here. We are reviewing War of Kings Omnibus, one of the highlights of the Marvel Modern Cosmic Saga by DNA here after Annihilation Conquest, going through the road to, we are reviewing the main event, War of Kings. We're gonna crack this omnibus open. It's still sealed, and we are going to read it and get into it. After about 8-9 weeks or so, with all of those interludes in between, we're finally here, the main event. Obviously, when Annihilation came out, that was the main event, but I think everything kind of built up to this moment. So this is me, Torsten, on Literature in Pictures, reviewing this omnibus. And while the intro rolls, like this video, subscribe to the channel so you're staying up to date with content like this and other stuff. There's still plenty of content to come with regards to the Modern Marvel Cosmic Saga here. And I would hate for you to miss out on the next upcoming few weeks videos where we're probably going to have another interlude before we are diving into the aftermath of War of Kings. But yes, let's dive right in. Annihilation Classic. Annihilation. Annihilation Conquest. Road to War of Kings. War of Kings. Realm of Kings. The aftermath. And we finally made it to the main event, War of Kings Omnibus. After a couple of weeks of bonus interludes and me powering through those 1,304 pages, we are finally here. Let's have a look at this beauty. The War of Kings Omnibus here with this beautiful cover. Let me just get that dust jacket off. Red bookend pages and this beautiful art on board. This wonderful image that we're going to see later on in the book. Let's have a look at the dust jacket again. This wonderful wraparound cover with the Inhumans, some of the X-Men, the Shi'ar Empire led by Emperor Vulcan. There's Ronan, the Accuser, and others here on this cover. So we'll dive in and talk about the story. Spoilers ahead. Last warning for spoilers. I'm going to talk everything that's in here, starting with how it's printed, how it's mapped, and then we're going to dive into the story. So the stories in here are from 2007 to 2009. This is the second printing of the War of Kings Omnibus. In fact, this was printed in 2022. A second printing printed by the iMac printer in Turkey. As I mentioned, 1,304 pages. The mapping of this is perfect. You have the lead up to the story explaining where Vulcan came from. Well, you have the road to War of Kings where it explains where Vulcan came from, but here kind of his escape, and we're going to talk about that in a second in more detail, but his venture to the Shi'ar Empire and everything leading up to War of Kings. A 6-issue main event here that then leads into a little bit of the aftermath. We're going to talk about the aftermath in a week or two when we talk about this beauty of an omnibus. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications if you want to be informed when this video goes live. But more about that later. In here, we have a little bit of the aftermath after War of Kings. In fact, we have the continuation of the Nova series and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Those events here are before, during, and after the events of War of Kings. I like that it's put in the end instead of like 2 issues before, 1 in between, and then the rest after. So you have all the Nova issues combined after the main event, all the Guardians of the Galaxy issues combined after the main event. Because yeah, if you break them up, I think it gets too convoluted and too confusing. In my opinion, it's the best event within the modern cosmic saga by DNA. Annihilation was great. Annihilation Conquest was even better. But I think this is the pinnacle of the modern Marvel cosmic saga. War of Kings, I think, stood out among the rest. It's through that lead up, through the pages of Annihilation Conquest, that all eventually leads here, even though events are referenced, not really impacting them directly, but more about that in a second. We get a little summary here on where we've been, about how Annihilus launched the Annihilation Wave, how that connects to Quasar, him dying, Richard Rider, and where he's been, and how Nova, the role of Nova has been to him and his path there. We learn again as a summary that Drax the Destroyer killed Thanos, and so on. Annihilation, where again, spoilers for Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest, but we learn again that Ultron led the Phalanx in Annihilation Conquest. The events of House of M are referenced because, yeah, things all go from there. We discussed a few weeks ago in the events of Road to War of Kings how Quicksilver ties into all of this and why the Inhumans are involved. But let's get started with Uncanny X-Men 475 through 486. We again get the story here. It picks you up at a point where the X-Men are after the events of House of M, obviously, and what's going on with them, how Vulcan is escaping, is what his plan is, where he's adventuring to, and kind of being thrown into a little bit deep water here because, yeah, some of those characters I didn't read the previous issues of X-Men and needed to be picked up here, but I think that happens rather quickly within a couple of issues or so. All right, again, Vulcan on his way to the Shi'ar Empire to take revenge. What is he taking revenge for? Again, you can read that in the pages of Road to War of Kings. Oh, stay tuned here when we get to that part. Those 12 issues are written by Ed Brubaker. The X-Men are chasing Vulcan, who seeks revenge. Does he get his revenge? Of course he does. He takes revenge on Decan, and he's taking over the Shi'ar. He kills Decan for the murder of his mother, and Vulcan becomes the emperor of the Shi'ar. Vulcan and Deathbird here are together. For her, he puts his hate against Decan aside, as it seems at first, but it's just a ploy for him to gain power. We see Decan asking Vulcan to marry his sister, Deathbird, and to join the Shi'ar. Vulcan agrees. Vulcan is quite interested in that agreement. And right when we get to the wedding here, we have Vulcan marrying into the Shi'ar royal family, Gladiator defending against the X-Men that are attacking and trying to stop Vulcan from taking revenge, from stopping the wedding. But they all made their plans without Vulcan. Vulcan traps Charles and kills Decan brutally, if I may say so. And he takes over the Shi'ar Empire because by him being born in the throne room, he has a right to the throne. And I don't use that word lightly. Being born means, yeah, Decan killed his mother in the throne room, ripped the baby out of the belly. And that's how Vulcan was born in the throne room. His mother killed by Decan. Vulcan claims the throne for him, kills Decan, and Deathbird sticks by his side, supports him. Obviously, there are fractions that are against him, that see someone else as the legitimate heir to the throne. And who is she? Well, we'll get there and we'll look closer into what her claim is and what she does about it. And from this point on, I was quite hooked. This is where it got really interesting for me, where this became a page turner. So we're getting to the end of the X-Men episodes here. The 12-issue series written by Brubaker is done. We get into Emperor Vulcan. Emperor Vulcan taking over the Shi'ar Empire. And the X-Men that keep chasing or keep fighting against Vulcan are now the Starjammers. Officially no longer the X-Men, the Starjammers, because they are the crew of the Starjammer. Those are Havoc, Polaris, Marvel Girl, and Corvus, the wielder of the Blade of the Phoenix. So there's some Phoenix energy going on, Phoenix Force going on, that gets relevant later on. We have other players here, namely the Shi'ar Tal, that their mission is to exterminate the Shi'ar. Obviously, that doesn't go well with Vulcan. Vulcan offers a ceasefire so that the X-Men and his forces can destroy the genocidal Shi'ar Tal first. So they're teaming up. The Starjammers and the Shi'ar are teaming up to defeat that enemy, which is interesting here because, yeah, obviously the X-Men don't want the genocide being unleashed on the Shi'ar, yet they also don't Vulcan in power, but they kind of help him out here. In the end, Vulcan wins against the Shi'ar Tal and takes the Stormbreakers prisoner. The Shi'ar accept him as their emperor, and that's how issue 5 ends. So Vulcan has established himself here as Emperor Vulcan. We're switching back to the X-Men. Divided we stand. Great issue with great art here. The art by Fraser Irvin. And I love that. That reminds me of Meltdown, that art style in which Havoc is portrayed. We're getting the Secret Invasion tie-in here, War of Kings, just a short part. Again, there's other tie-ins in the Road to War of Kings with regards to the Secret Invasion storyline. Again, separately, I reviewed Secret Invasion by Bendis here a week ago or so. And if you're interested in me reviewing this mini-series or this event book, go into the playlist and find the Secret Invasion video I made. And you can pick up right after this. I read this first, then I read War of Kings. I think that helps with regards to some of the story that's going on here with the Skrulls and where they've been. Because here we are following the events of Secret Invasion. The Skrulls retreated from Earth. Black Bolt shatters them. And that's basically the end of the Skrulls here. With this Secret Invasion tie-in, we have Black Bolt, who is moving Attilan into space to attack the Skrulls. And we have Crystal's narration here, who is terrified Black Bolt taking the Inhumans out of the shadows. Because Black Bolt is very mighty and he has a lot of power that he likes to unleash. The Skrulls escape to Shi'ar space. Black Bolt follows them. And that's that. Meanwhile, the Kree are on Hala, led by Ronan. But we have Black Bolt and the Inhumans who are now attacking on the other side of space. They are attacking the Kree. Why are they attacking the Kree? Well, they want to take them over. The Inhumans were created by the Kree originally, and Black Bolt now says, Medusa speaks through him, because he shouldn't open his mouth there. But the Kree created the Inhumans, and Black Bolt wants to serve the Kree to their fullest potential, which means he leads them in war times, and he will lead the Kree. He will take over the Kree. And we have Ronan, who kneels to Black Bolt. The Inhumans are now ruling the Kree, and Black Bolt is basically now that other king. So if you're wondering what is War of Kings, well, the rulers here are Emperor Vulcan with the Shi'ar and Black Bolt, who rules the Inhumans and the Kree. The Skrulls are basically out of the picture at this point, based on those events here. And you have Black Bolt as Vulcan's counterpart, those two mighty kings clashing against each other and their armies as well. There's another king that we're going to talk about later that doesn't become really relevant until after the main event, which comes from the negative zone, but a little bit later about him. For now, we have King Vulcan, or Emperor Vulcan, I should say, and King Black Bolt. But as I mentioned, is Emperor Vulcan actually a legitimate ruler of the Shi'ar? Well, that is debatable, because we have this character here, Empress Lilandra, formerly the girlfriend of Charles Xavier. They've broken up since then, but she, in many of the Shi'ar people's eyes, she's the legitimate ruler. The Empress Lilandra is the legitimate successor of the Khan, next in line, because many don't recognize Vulcan as their leader, yet he has the power through his coup d'etat. And we have the X-Men, or the former X-Men, who are accompanying her and trying to get her to sit on the throne. How they're going to do that? Well, they don't know yet, because again, Vulcan is leading the Empire while she has like a small splinter group behind her. We have Havoc and Polaris, Lorna, who are still in prison, so they need to be freed first. And we're going to have those events play out here. Overall, a big lead up to the main event. How some of the Stormbreakers are broken out of prison, how they form behind Lilandra, and how the main players are moving into their spots. I really like that. I like the somewhat linear lead up through multiple strings. So it's not that events are zigzagging back and forth, but more like you have like 3 or 4 different storylines that are all leading to the pinnacle of this omnibus. Different storylines, but still they're all happening in parallel. So it's not really contradicting like House of M was, but more all a linear storyline here through different miniseries, through different tie-ins that are all tied together. Kind of reminds me of the Annihilation omnibus that also had different miniseries, all those tying in together, making sense in general. But here we've reached a point where Vulcan completely obliterates his opponents. He kills the Galactic Council. And the Kree are not happy, because now he has solidified his power as the Shi'ar ruler. There is no more Galactic Council. They're all gone. And he really establishes himself as the Emperor. The Starjammers here break out, led by Havoc. And we, as I mentioned, we see them setting on the path of that counter-revolution, supporting Lilandra and her claim to the throne. Through the pages here, we see all the Starjammers reunite and coming back together as a team here. That will continue to support Lilandra. Will all of them make it to the end? Well, of course not, but again, we're not there yet. At that point, we are now introduced to Darkhawk. We have a 2-issue miniseries introducing Chris Powell and Talon, who are both going to the negative zone. And at this point, it doesn't really become clear why they are relevant. We kind of get a hint that Talon is not really acting in the best interest of Chris, but he kind of pushes him to take on the mantle of Darkhawk and to fill the shoes of the suit that he was given, the role that he was given. More about that later. I think that might be one of the only things where I don't necessarily agree with the placement, even though I don't know where else to place this. It just feels a little bit out of context. But yeah, we need to be introduced to Darkhawk and Talon before we get to the main event. So I get that they had to put it somewhere, which I guess at this point is here. We are switching back to the main players, especially, or some of the side players, seemingly side players here, through the pages of Warriors. It is the final tie-in before the main event. It explores some of the side characters, like Gladiator. Where did Gladiator come from? What was his role, and why is he so loyal to Vulcan? What's that all about? Because he definitely, his personal opinion, doesn't support Vulcan. He supports Lilandra. But we get a little explanation here of why he's been sticking around and why he's been supporting Vulcan for that long, based on where he comes from. He is obedient without a doubt, and that's where his backflash ends. I mentioned there's another player coming from the negative zone. Well, of course, that's Blastar. We get his rise to power here through those pages. He unites forces in the negative zone and invades his homeworld, Balsar, and kind of comes up as this third player who is not going to play a role in the main event here, but in the aftermath he does. And Blastar kind of becoming the king of the negative zone, or more. We'll find out in the Aftermath Omnibus. We're going to talk about that in a week or so. And of course, we got to talk about Crystal here, sister of Medusa, ex-wife of Quicksilver, fiancée of Ronan. Crystal and the Inhumans on Hala. She is a very important player. She kind of unites the Inhumans and Kree by not only by marrying Ronan, but also by her empathy towards both sides. She understands the Inhumans, she understands the Kree, and she's a very reasonable character here, one of the strongest characters that I think exist in this storyline. Not strong with regards to her powers, but strong with regards to character. So we get her backstory and a little bit more about where she came from and how she is winning the hearts of the Kree, which some of the Kree see the Inhumans rule as a criminal, as an offense to the Kree. Why are the Kree ruled by the Inhumans? Many don't understand that, but Crystal here kind of listens to the Kree and their concerns. We also get a backstory on Lilandra, a backflash to her youth while she's on board of the Starjammer, and where Lilandra came from and what her role is. So just a little bit more backstory, fleshing out those characters. I love that right before the main event starts. And so we are getting to the main event. The War of Kings starts here. War of Kings issue 1. We have it narrated. We have two narrators. We have it narrated by Crystal. Those are the blue bubbles here. And we have another part narrated by Gladiator. Those are the red narration bubbles. But we begin the event with the Starjammers. Again, you're being reintroduced to them, even though if you've read all of this, you know who they are. The Starjammers, Polaris, Havoc, Chod, Marvel Girl, Lilandra, kind of the rightful heir here in their view, Corvus. We see them venturing to Kree space as they are chased by the Shi'ar. Why are they going to Kree space? Well, they are gonna ask for help. And so the Kree are opening their shields for the Starjammers to get through, because Polaris claims that they're invited to the wedding. And so we have Ronan and Crystal's wedding coming up here in issue 1. And the Starjammers kind of, crashing that wedding, but they're being followed by the Shi'ar. And so we kind of have the wedding crashers all come in at that time. So Emperor Vulcan is attacking the wedding. And while the ceremony is going on, he crashes in, he disintegrates some people, and his army, led by Gladiator, is attacking. Did the wedding happen? So one of the main questions here, did Crystal actually get married to Vulcan? Or did the Shi'ar stop that in the tracks? Because that kind of solidifies the Inhumans' role and rule within the Kree Empire. We don't find that out here, we find that out later, but apparently yes, the wedding has been completed. Ronan and Crystal are officially husband and wife. And so we get the Shi'ar attack commencing on the Kree, and they knock out Black Bolt and capture Lilandra. So she's being captured. Gladiator almost kills Ronan the Accuser. I mean, that looks like he's dead, but Ronan is strong and Ronan survives. But the Inhumans are defeated for now, and Medusa promises revenge. Black Bolt promises revenge. We're getting into issue 2 here, where Crystal calms the Kree citizens a little bit. She calms them down, and Maximus updated the sentries, so he got the weapons in place. They got the Kree behind them because now they have a common enemy. Again, Maximus also trying to claim the throne, but yeah, he's being dismissed. That's more like a running gag in here instead of an actual claim. But with the updated sentries, the Kree are now standing behind Black Bolt and they are attacking. Along with the Starjammers, they are launching a counterattack. Getting into issue 3. Crystal very concerned about Ronan, but he survived. But she kind of takes on that lead role here as the connector, as the bridge between Inhumans and Kree. And Crystal is legitimately interested in helping and advancing the Kree. Other Inhumans only think of war, so Medusa thinks of revenge and launches such revenge. So then, out of nowhere, and that's kind of one of the things I dislike, but kind of out of nowhere, the Starjammers add the Guardians of the Galaxy into the mix. We later learn that they have 2 teams, and why one of those teams shows up here, that is explained through the pages of the Guardians of the Galaxy. That it's like kind of covered in the end, in the back here. But they kind of come out of nowhere, and I don't actually like that. There's no lead up. They are not tied into the story. They don't have an actual role to play other than just popping in and causing some havoc and then getting out again. Similar to Nova. Like, we had all of this build up with Nova and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they don't really play a big role in War of Kings. It's more the Inhumans and the Shi'ar and the Starjammers, aka former X-Men. But I guess that's not their event, yet they show up. And yes, the Guardians do, well, I said they don't play a major role, but they do end up rescuing Lilandra, who, again, is to many the rightful empress of the Shi'ar. And what we get now is kind of the breaking point of this series. We have the big switch of mind. We have Gladiator switching sides. That's the turning point in the war. Him switching side. He's been loyal to the throne, whoever sits on the throne for the longest time, but he can't take it no more. He is finally switching, taking matters in his own hands. and deciding that enough is enough. He switches, breaks his loyalty with the throne, with Emperor Vulcan, and he addresses Lilandra as the true Empress. That's the main turning point. Gladiator switching sides, because to be honest, he is kind of overpowered. Like, his powers are almost equal as those as Vulcan. Maybe not as much, but like, he is a key player, and with Gladiator's support, the Kree or Inhumans are now able to turn the tides. We then see Lilandra, who tries to get power back on Chandilar. Meanwhile, Talon comes out of nowhere, and that's why it's good that we were introduced to Blackhawk and Talon, I don't know, coming out of nowhere, and pledges his allegiance to Vulcan. So kind of, okay, he serves the Shi'ar, but why is he with Vulcan? Again, we'll find out later. But we have Blaster assisting here as well, just for a moment. And the sides seem to be equaled again. Gladiator now on Lilandra's side, Talon, Blaster on the other. And in all of this mess, in the big attack, Lilandra is shot. She dies. So that's the other, like, I feel this issue is loaded with big twists and key moments that influence the entire Shi'ar Empire, the Kree Empire, Gladiator switch of allegiance, Lilandra being shot. She's dead. Like, she's dead for real. This is not like she's gonna come back in a few pages or so. That's it. Kind of their claim why they were all fighting is gone. There's no reason. The only reason to fight now is to defeat the Shi'ar, but no longer to install a different ruler, because that ruler, that only other legitimate heir, is gone now. So we have the Inhumans having to find another way, having to kind of take out the sledgehammer if you want to go against Vulcan, who is completely angry now. You kind of have to bring out the sledgehammer. The only one who sees through all of it and that war is not the way to go is Crystal, but she can't convince Black Bolt not to go ballistic as well as his response to Vulcan. And so we have the big show off we've been waiting for, the War of Kings, Emperor Vulcan against King Black Bolt in issue 6. And what is Black Bolt doing? Well, he does what he does best. He launches such a devastating attack. He launches the T-bomb with Terrigen Mist to make everyone inhuman. So he thinks that by making everyone inhuman, there's no reason to fight anymore. Well, I kind of didn't understand that part. So the decision making on Black Bolt's side here is not really, how do I say this? I couldn't follow that mindset, that plot, neither does Crystal. So I'm not the only one here. It's like, why would the war end just because by you transforming everyone with Terrigen Mist? Makes no sense to me. We don't get there anyway, so I guess that might just be a plot point that they wanted to put in here. Again, don't understand it. The actual fight between Vulcan and Black Bolt escalates a complete different direction, so we don't have to worry about the Terrigen Mist anymore. But we have another storyline that begins here. We have Gladiator, who rises now out of the ashes, and the Shi'ar people who formerly supported Lilandra want him to rule. So we get that alternative now, like, who should rule in Vulcan's place? Because it shouldn't be or cannot be Lilandra anymore, but people are supporting Gladiator. Gladiator absolutely does not want that, but we get to that discussion later. First of all, again, we still have the ongoing fight between Vulcan and Black Bolt going on. It's the King versus King, Emperor versus King, and we see Black Bolt winning because Black Bolt unleashes a power never seen before. Well, first he defeats Vulcan, but Vulcan, despite all of this, is not really dead yet. But we have Crystal as the voice of reason, stopping Black Bolt from transforming everyone with the Terrigen Mist. Yet he destroyed Vulcan, but Vulcan is still alive. What Black Bolt does now will change everything. He goes the ultimate solution, the ultimate sacrifice. He kills himself to kill Vulcan. And he launches an attack, an overpowered attack that does not only kill himself, Vulcan, but it also shatters time and space. There's a hole now in space and time, which is part of why there needs to be an aftermath, I guess. But the conclusion is the war is over with great costs. That's how this event ends. And my thoughts on this, I love Crystal's role. Crystal's role is great. She is the connective part, the glue between Inhumans, Kree, the voice of reason. She's not the legitimate heir. That would be, I guess, Medusa after Black Bolt's demise. But she's definitely a key player that should be listened to. I dislike that the Guardians of the Galaxy only had a small role to play. I can't believe that Black Bolt is dead. Like, that's kind of... I mean, I'm okay with Vulcan. Like, he only showed up in the Road to, but Black Bolt is a key player. He's the leader of the Inhumans. That goes beyond this omnibus. That goes beyond just the cosmic saga, where I feel Vulcan was kind of introduced or reintroduced and explored further for this event. Black Bolt definitely was bigger than this. And him being dead is a big change. And there are many loose ends that need to be tied up. I guess, again, that's why we have the Aftermath Omnibus. And that's why we have, even though the main event is over at this point, still, I guess, more than a third of this book to go through. So, the war is over. Where do we go from here? And that's where we get into War of Kings Ascension. We are visiting the negative zone. Chris, aka Darkhawk, realizes that him and Talon are the bad guys. It's like, what have you done? Like, we're supposed to, I'm supposed to do good, but I see what you're doing here is not good. I have those memories now. I see what you've done, and it's horrible. Killed Lilandra, for example. Talon flushes out Blackhawk and Razor replaces him. So we have someone else taking the mantle of Blackhawk now. But Chris, kind of aided here, is coming back. But again, those events are happening in the negative zone, which leads me to wonder, where's Blaster? Like, isn't he the king of the negative zone? Anyways, they get to... If you remember, in the events of Annihilation, at the end, they are hatching Annihilus's embryo. Yeah, they free him. Throughout those pages, they free Annihilus's embryo and leave. And what do they do with him? We'll find out, I guess. Some backstory here. Again, this mental battle between Razor and Chris, who takes on the mantle of Blackhawk. And again, we were wondering, where was Blaster? Well, there he is. He has the cosmic rod now. And, yep, it's a short cameo, but at least we know he's still here. Spoiler again for the rest, like, he's still gonna be a key player. So, make no mistake, Blaster is coming back. And then here, again, through those pages, we see the events where Lilandra was killed. And we realize that it was Razor who did it. Razor, while he was Darkhawk and wore that armor, killed Lilandra. And just as they discover who it was, Chris switches back in the armor and kind of has to bury the consequences because Justice Gladiator attacks. And again, those events are happening in parallel with War of Kings. It's like Chris now in the mantle is like, what? That was not me. Razor, what did you do? So we have Shi'ar Gladiator attacking, in this case, Chris now. Yeah, Vulcan is still alive. Again, this happens in parallel. I like that they put it after because we see the conclusion to War of Kings through those pages yet again from different angles. And we see what happens to Talon because Talon also pushed someone else out of his amulet, out of his armor, which was a scroll. But Chris here tells the scroll how he can replace Talon, or at least if not replace him, he can make him go away by killing himself. So he kills and sacrifices himself to kill Talon as well. Darkhawk escapes, and we're getting to another tie-in that includes the Son of Hulk. But we have Scar here, half Son of Hulk, from the events of World War Hulk and then Planet Hulk. Just have them visit this world. Is it relevant? Well, it's a tie-in. And we have a Kree and a Shi'ar ship who are pulled onto Saga. This is a story about the Imperial Guard and Inhumans working together. Maybe just foreshadowing of how they have to work together to unify the universe. I don't know. But they're surviving the night as they're working together. Again, Imperial Guard and Inhumans surviving the night to face the Son of Hulk in the morning. And man, he's strong. He's like standing in lava here and takes no harm, which makes them realize fire does not harm him. We have Lockjaw, who teleports them out, and they're back. Well, their collaboration is over, and so he starts taking hostages here. Well, again, before issue 6, it's placed here, but it also underlines where both sides come from. We are finally here. Nova is continued. The story of Richard Rider continues. And we learn a few important things through those pages. Nova 23 through 28. Richard Rider has no powers and is dying. Again, that's where we left off after issue 22 that you have collected in the Road to War of Kings. We have Quasar, who tries to help him in a Force body here. Not in actual form because he died. But he comes back, his spirit comes back. We have S.H.I.E.L.D. that is replaced. Norman Osborn takes over for Tony Stark. We have Ego. Well, jumping ahead. Yeah. Norman Osborn is taking over. Tony Stark is kicked out. But we have Ego, the living planet, that travels to the war. Wendell gives Richard the quantum bands because, again, Richard is dying. And they need to find a way of keeping him alive without his powers. But he receives the quantum bands from Quasar, and that saves him. And kind of changes his powers as well. So he's a Nova now with quantum bands. And he is out to push back the world mind, because the world mind seems to have gone crazy. But has it? Has it really gone crazy, or is there something else behind it? Well, we find out there's something else behind it. We found out that Egon has been corrupting the world mind, and the world mind needs saving. And so the entire Nova Corp is kind of a hoax and premature and needs improvement or disassembling to be grown back organically in a more sustainable way. We have Gladiator, who defeats the Nova Corps. Richard discovers that Ego has taken over the world mind in those pages here, and that he needs to help, needs to do something. Richard reunites with the world mind. As Nova Prime, he now defeats Ego and kind of saves the Nova Corps and saves the people in it and sends them back home. But someone who can't be found is his brother Robbie. Richard finds Blastar's negative zone army arriving on Kreelar, where Ravenous had ruled. And he's following the path of his brother. And he wants to make sure his brother is okay and the rest of the Nova Corps is okay. Well, the Nova Corps is not okay, not all of them. There are many, many dead, many that have died. And what Richard Rider is doing, though, is he's convincing Blastar to be reasonable, to be a reasonable leader and join the good side, Yes, replace Ravenous, that's fine. But do it as a kind king so that he will not be dethroned and be taken seriously by a new galactic council. Well, Richard finds his brother Robbie, saves him, and allows him to stay in the Nova Corps. He leaves Blaster behind, Blaster promising him he will be better, and so he leaves him in place and charge. But Robbie is now also a Nova, and so we're gonna leave Nova here at that point, where we're gonna go into the events of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy 13 through 19. We have two teams. Two teams have formed. One team that goes after the Kree, and one team, the heavy hitters, go after the Shi'ar. Again, those events are happening before War of Kings, and now we are understanding where they come from, where the team that goes after the Shi'ar reappears, where the other team that goes after the Kree and tries to convince the Kree reasonably, where they reappear, and what they talk to Black Bolt about. Unsuccessfully, they're trying to convince him of be reasonable, but we know already what happened in the War of Kings. There's a hole now in time and space that needs fixing, and that's kind of where the Guardians of the Galaxy are going in this story. First, again, it explains how the Guardians met the Starjammers, how they connected, how Havoc talked to them, and how they entered the war. It's just a backstory again. It would have been good knowing that going into War of Kings, but again, if the mapping was any different, I would have disliked it even more, so I'm fine with it. I guess when those issues came out monthly, those would have gone hand in hand in parallel. But so be it. And here we have a nice image. What a great spread page. And this image is used, if you remember, on the cover on board here. From those pages of Guardians of the Galaxy 14. That's how that issue ends, and we're getting further into the story, further into the war, closer to the pinnacle of War of Kings. And as those events unfold in War of Kings, we're seeing it from the perspective here of the Guardians. But again, we're getting into the aftermath. With issue 16, we're getting into the aftermath of War of Kings, where we have that huge hole in space and time. And the Guardians of the Galaxy are traveling to the future. They are traveling to different futures, alternative futures, that all show them what would have gone wrong, what will go wrong if that hole keeps growing, because it is growing. As a solution, they can't travel back, but they have Cosmo sending back a message in time to Adam Warlock, who receives that message and is tasked with fixing the events, fixing the hole before it's happening, trying to convince Black Bolt not to unleash that nuke, to unleash his voice that will end up ripping space and time apart. Adam Warlock is tasked with stopping Black Bolt there, but he is not successful. The rapture still happens. Groot and Maximus work on a solution now. And do they find a solution? Well, no, not really. Stuff still goes wrong. So Adam Warlock has to find another solution. He ends up casting a spell. A spell using the Universal Church of Truth to connect them to an alternative future. That alternative future comes with a huge cost though. And Adam Warlock is no longer Adam Warlock. The future Adam picked is the one where he loses himself and becomes Adam Magus. Adam is Magus now, which also is not in anyone's interest. And so we have an alternative future. Again, the Guardians of the Galaxy living in those alternative future, and they're finding out now what had happened. That all of those alternative futures are now connected to the world where Magus existed and where Magus ruled. So what's the alternative to that? They're still able to communicate, but what do they have Adam do? Or what does Adam do? He sacrifices himself while a bunch of Guardians die. So again, not all of the Guardians survive in this battle, but Adam also stopped. He's no longer Magus. And that leads us to the big question. Who will rule? Well, we still have the Fold, the rip in space and time, which to me, in this, especially in this Aftermath story here, seems to be a metaphor for the A-bomb. Black Bolt, the US, had to use extensive measures to stop a war they didn't start. That's kind of like the thing I got out of this one here. It's very, very heavily influenced or referencing, I guess, Black Bolt unleashing a bomb that destroyed everything. Came with a high cost, but that was the only way to stop the war, to kill Vulcan, to stop the Shi'ar from conquering the entire universe. And we have the Aftermath here. Who is gonna be the heir now to Vulcan? Who's that? Obviously on the Inhumans and Kree side, that's Medusa. But who is it for the Shi'ar? Well, Gladiator doesn't want to pick up that mantle, but Crystal kind of tricks him into accepting it. She tells him, it would have been me. If you decline, it would be me, but I'm definitely not the one. And then Gladiator says, well, my role is to serve, not to rule. Well, she says, sometimes to serve the throne, you've got to be the throne. And he's like, well, F you, damn you. You kind of tricked me there. All right, I'll rule the Shi'ar. And as I mentioned, Adam sacrificing himself. Magus is still there. I know he tried to defeat Magus, but man, that guy, gets me excited for the Aftermath, gets me excited for Realm of Kings. Well, I'm so looking forward to this. I hope the loose ends that we saw in those pages here are gonna be wrapped up, but we'll find out in a couple of weeks or so. Again, if you know me by now, you know there's gonna be an interlude coming next week. So in a couple of weeks, we might be continuing with Realm of Kings. But first of all, let me say thank you for staying this long, for watching this video. If you're interested in this build, let me see if I can display that. There's an eye, a small eye, but an eye. And I will say there was not that much gutter loss. I don't know if we can find a page here real quick where we can display that somewhere in the middle. Towards the end. I didn't have any problems reading this. There are no word bubbles or so lost in the gutter. Images are fine. Spread pages were fine as well. I showed you that big one earlier. Can't find it right now, but great build of this book. Great story. To me, the magnum opus of DNA here, part of the modern Marvel Cosmic Saga. Great story. Again, why is this to me the best story out of the three? Annihilation, Annihilation Conquest, and now War of Kings. While we get a better protagonist, I guess. Annihilus and Ultron as well felt kind of players in the bag. They didn't really have too much of a reason there. We get an explanation in the backstory on Vulcan, what his motives are, where he came from, what his relationship to Charles is, how Charles misused him, and how the Khan murdered his mother, and why he wants to take revenge, and all of that. I think those are very human motives, and why he's unleashing the war is kind of more reasonable than just someone from the negative zone coming over to unleash an annihilation wave, or Ultron using the phalanx and to conquer space. I think both sides are well explored here. Black Bolt and the Inhumans, how their relationship is with the Kree and how they're taking over the Kree, why Ronan gives up power that easily, where he comes from. Again, a few things that I'd like to see flushed out more is, I guess, Black Hawk having more of a reason where he comes from, but I guess we're gonna get in there. Blaster usage, why do you introduce characters that don't really play a role? And then Nova and the Guardians, of course. I want to know where they're gonna go afterwards. So we'll read the aftermath. I really liked the human nature of some of those players. You see Ronan being very emotional, actually bringing flowers to Crystal until he overhears her conversation here with Lorna, and him being heartbroken, throwing the flowers away because he thinks she just marries him to fulfill her role as the glue between Inhumans and Kree. But again, that is all explored here. I think they're making for a great couple, Ronan and Crystal do, and I hope to see more of them. For now, that was it. I'm gonna have a few more words back at the table, but for now, let me know if you have any questions with regards to the build of this book, with regards to the page quality. Again, I think they're great. There's no bleed through. I don't know how the next printing will look like, but for now, I love this story. And that was my review of War of Kings, the main event, the pinnacle of Marvel's modern cosmic saga by DNA. To me, the best part of the entire series amongst everything. Annihilation, Conquest. Obviously, the road to War of Kings stood out as the connecting glue between Annihilation, Conquest and War of Kings. But everything in here came neatly together. I think the use of the characters was well chosen. I know I criticized the lack of usage of Nova and the Guardians a little bit, but to be fair, they had to make way and space for some others to shine. Like, you wouldn't have the Starjammers in their role if it was for the Guardians to take their place. And I guess others as well, like Black Bolt and Vulcan, stood out in their roles, and Gladiator and Crystal stepped up in a way that they might not be able or wouldn't have been able to if there was Nova. So in that case, I am super happy with this one. I can only recommend it. It obviously is meaningful, and more meaningful if you've read all these other stories that led up to it. And with that, I can only recommend getting into the Cosmic Saga from the beginning. I know there are a lot of reprints just recently, and some of them are coming. So if you want to collect the entire event in omnibus format, all of those 5 omnis, I think now's the time. Now is your chance to do so with the recent reprints of Annihilation, Conquest, and I think Road to and Aftermath, I think were already reprinted, and War of Kings should be available as well. I know some of those get a reprint later this year, so stay tuned. Look out for what the announcements are. Actually, I think Omar just made an announcement a few months ago. I'll insert that clip right here for just a second.
Coming in August of 2025 is the Annihilation Conquest Omnibus. That's right. We have Annihilation, a new printing of Annihilation coming out earlier this year, and then Annihilation Conquest later on in August.
And with that, you know when that reprint is coming as well. Again, never too late to get into this series, never too late to get started. And speaking of getting started, I think this series is almost coming to an end with only one omnibus remaining. Whether I'll review this one next week or the week after, if you've followed this series, this playlist, by now you should know that there's probably a bonus interlude coming next week before, maybe in 2 weeks, I'm gonna dive into the realm of Kings. That's the aftermath. War of Kings aftermath, Realm of Kings. How is he gonna come back? I thought he died. Anyways, this thing is still sealed, so I have to first split it open and read it before I can talk about it. Give me a couple of weeks here. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications if you want to stay informed, if you want to be notified when those videos go live. Again, more bonus content coming. We saw some cool bonus interludes, so to me that was pretty cool. I don't know, let me know what you felt about it, of building this guy here and unwrapping, unpacking that dude over here over the last few weeks. So more stuff coming here in the coming weeks. This is Literature and Pictures. I want to thank you for watching. We're almost through this series. Still a few more weeks to come and with cool stuff that I have in mind. So stay tuned. Until next time. Thank you. Also heavy, man. I can do some exercise here.